There's beauty in so much in everyday life, whether that's, the air blowing through the trees, or whether that's the smile on a child's face, or, it's a beautiful sunny day. There's just beauty all around us, whether that's natural beauty or just the beauty of humanity. And so I think beautiful is my favorite word.
And welcome everyone to another episode of Humanity 2.0 podcast, where we are doing some real talk with real humans. Today's guest is John Borden. He is an author. He has a coaching business. He is a physical marvel. I've seen your photos. Thanks for joining us. How are you doing today?
We're awesome, Vanessa. It's a gorgeous day here in St. Pete. Just, so grateful for every day to be able to go outside and live life to the fullest, and, just to embrace everything that this beautiful city, this beautiful world has to offer.
Yes, I've heard so many wonderful things about Florida. I can't even imagine what it's like to live in that beauty every single day and just go out, to the water, go out and have such a great time with your family. It
hmm
really must be. Well, I guess I can see why people retire there, right?
Yeah, and I'm just grateful that I came here before retirement. It'd been something where I told myself growing up in New Jersey that I wanted to make a change and move down here for the longest time. Just the natural beauty, the environment from the people's standpoint, it has exceeded all the expectations that I had when I moved here 3.5 years ago. And, the just the ability to wake up every single day and throw on shorts and a t-shirt and go outside and be able to run, bike, play volleyball, pickleball, whatever it is that I want to do, and know that with 99% certainty that I'm going to be able to do it based on the weather is a beautiful thing, especially when those winter months come along.
Yeah, man, I'm so jealous. Don't be surprised if you see like a huge uptick on new folks moving to St. Pete.
But yeah.
It's going to be all your fault. So I want to open things up with some really fun questions just to loosen things up. Most times interviews can be really rigid. So to get to know you better, I'd like to ask, what are you notoriously bad at?
Oh man, that's actually kind of tough because I kind of pride myself on being a jack of all trades in a number of different senses. Slowing down, I would say I'm notoriously bad at. I have a very high motor. I have a very high bar for success for myself. I'm constantly striving to do things and achieve and push myself forward in different ways. And, it doesn't really come at the behest of my sleep or how I take care of myself or anything like that. But there definitely is a lot of value in just being able to slow down and smell the roses sometimes. And I forget that sometimes.
And on the opposite end of that spectrum, what are you good at? What's something that you're good at that nobody knows you're good at?
Well, so being who I am, right, being in athletics and everything like that, I think it surprises a lot of people the skill and depth with which my writing comes across. I've had a number of people reach out to me and go, dude, this book is incredible. And it's like they don't expect it from somebody who's, lifting weights and running across the world and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's definitely something to be proud of. And when you write, does it just like flow out of you like so simply? Or is it like kind of you have to take time and really like put together a plan on what it is you're writing about?
Yeah, well, so I was never the type of person that really followed outlines or things like that in high school. Teachers would ask us to put together multiple page outline of what the paper would look like, and I'd just always be like, I'm going to skip that part, I'm just going to start writing. And that's exactly the same structure that I followed with my book, is that it started as a passion project and something that I knew that I wanted to do,
Hmm.
but wasn't really focused on the how to write. I just started writing, and I'm really proud of how it came together, and the work that I put in to do that. It took me a year and a half, which maybe with a little bit better structure it would have come together quicker. But now that I say that, I'm recognizing that no, it needed to come together exactly as it did, because the
Hmm.
events of the story continued to unfold as the writing progressed.
I agree that sometimes writing comes from purely inside and then it just pours out in whatever way that it does. I feel like there are so many works and so many artists that do that, that they don't really follow any kind of outline or formula, and it produces the best work. Sometimes people get wrapped up in the formula and in the process that they forget about that true inspiration, where that comes from. So let it flow freely. I agree.
But yeah.
What is your favorite word?
When I had my experience 3 years ago that completely shifted the trajectory of my life, my roommate at the time started clowning me for using the word beautiful as much as I do. But it's really a word that has exposed itself as having such an incredible meaning behind it. There's beauty in so much in everyday life, whether that's, the air blowing through the trees, or whether that's the smile on a child's face, or, it's a beautiful sunny day. There's just beauty all around us, whether that's natural beauty or just the beauty of humanity. And so I think beautiful is my favorite word.
Yeah, that is a very good word. Do you remember that movie American Beauty?
Hmm.
Okay, so the
Hmm.
bag scene, the plastic bag,
Hmm.
that for me made me stop and think about all of these beautiful things. So funny that you just brought that up for me, but yeah, it was so true. In that particular moment, I remember watching it, saying like, "Oh yeah, there is so much more than we understand." And I was so young, so I was very fortunate that after that, I was able to recognize the beauty everywhere and everything. And to this
Yeah.
day, that's it's such an important thing to do.
And that's such a deep movie on a number of fronts. Kevin Spacey's role in that is just so dynamic and really takes you deep into the psychology of middle class America and really the pains that go on when you live a life of not fulfilling your dreams and not following the things that really matter to you. And he kind of reaches that give up point, which is draws a lot of parallels to where I was in my life prior to my experience 3 years ago that shifted the trajectory of mine. And it's really easy to see how people can fall into that kind of depression mindset.
Hmm.
And he had, I mean, obviously a wife that was cheating on him and everything like that, and they didn't have a great relationship. He had a kid that was defiant and not really understanding, so on and so forth. And but there's just so much pain that exists even in a family that presents as so great on the outside. And it's a really really beautiful movie from that standpoint because it really takes us through the range of human emotion.
For sure. And I feel like you could really see the perspective from every single family member. And
Hmm.
like they all had reasons for hurting and they all had their separate storylines that were so powerful. So it was really interesting to watch.
Big time.
When it comes to like your personal story, do you have a particular quote or a particular phrase that you utilize to pull yourself through?
Well, so the first Spartan race I ever did, I reached a point about 2/3 of the way through the race where everything's cramping and I'm in an extreme amount of pain. And I just kept repeating to myself, I'm a fucking machine. I'm a fucking machine. I'm a fucking machine. And that really got me through the last hour or so of that race, is just repeating that to myself over and over and over again. And then about a year after that, I did my first ultra marathon. And during that race, I'd shown up having never attempted anything longer than a half marathon and going into a 46-mile race. And I asked myself, how the hell am I going to do this? And the answer came, well, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And so it's become a thing that when I'm doing these incredible challenges that I put myself through, I just continue to focus on that one little bite of elephant over and over and over again. And so, it's kind of become a thing. I've got an elephant necklace that I wore during my recent 100-mile race. And, it just kind of becomes a thing with my friends and the people all around me.
I love that. I love that phrase too, being a machine and just imagining what that takes. That's a really powerful phrase as well. In
Mhm.
addition to the elephant, love the elephant. When you think of the word humanity, what's the first image or story or feeling that comes to mind for you?
I really just think of families and the what it means to be human. Over the past number of years, I've been just thinking a lot about what we are as human beings. At our heart, we're animals, just animals that have learned to communicate very effectively and be able to organize ourselves. And if we strip ourselves down to the very bare bones, we are no different than dogs or bears or whatever living on this planet. Just we've figured out a way to organize ourselves and to create and continue to build things. And so, what it all comes down to is that we are animals, right? And how we take care of ourselves, how we protect each other, how we care for each other. It's all very innate to us from a survival instinct and from a protecting the tribe type of instinct. And so, just kind of looking at things through a lens of like, okay, if we were all on this planet separate and we didn't have, the things that divide us, what is going to be the most important thing? And that's just protecting each other, caring for one another, and doing things that we know are going to help other people be in a better position for themselves. And then, having that reciprocity coming back to us through that goodwill.
Hmm. Do you have kids?
Not yet. We're
When you
trying.
do, good luck. What when you do have kids, what kind of qualities and good habits do you want them to have in this world?
Hmm. Well, I mean, first and foremost, health is the primary focus of mine and my wife's life. We want to make sure that our kids are health forward, that they're positive people, that they're helping other people be healthy and live good lives and be inspired and kind of lead through example of the effort that they give for themselves and for others, while also being kind people, volunteering, helping, other kids out with their homework or whatever it is, putting your best foot forward to make sure that you're not just taken care of, but that other people around you are also feeling the benefits of the effort that you can give. If you're the smartest kid in the class, it doesn't do you any good unless you're helping other kids be as smart or as successful as they can be as well. And so that's really what we want to cultivate, is we want to cultivate kids who are, the best versions of themselves from, a health and from, a performance standpoint, whether that's in school or otherwise, while also understanding that they have a bigger role to play than just themselves and looking for little ways that they can help others in their daily lives.
Other people remind us of our shared humanness, and sometimes their actions and their stories in our lives help us to perceive humanity on a whole different level. Is there a person that has done that for you, where their empathy or their kindness or compassion toward you or someone else just changed how you view humanity?
Hmm. Well, in kind of a backwards way, yes. So there was this guy that I met about 4 years ago now. Uh, and I was at a bar in West Hartford, Connecticut. And at that time, I was just deep in depression and, alcohol and cocaine abuse, and just questioning how my life had gotten to the point that it had. And, there were so many things that had brought me to there, whether it was, getting fired from a job that I didn't believe that I deserved to get fired for, or a girlfriend leaving me, or, COVID happening and then that necessitating my move from New Jersey to Connecticut. And after speaking to this random guy at a bar for 30 minutes, he gave me the truth that nobody else in my life had been willing to. And that's that everything was my fault and that I was blaming everybody else that I possibly could for where I was at in life rather than myself. And so by him telling me that and being honest with me in a way that nobody else in my life had been willing to, it helped to shed all the BS that I'd been perpetuating in my mind. And so because of that, right? Like that's a very tough love thing. That's not like a, hold hands and kumbaya kind of love humanity, but it does show an extremely deep level of care, because if he didn't care for me, if he didn't want me to be the best version of myself, he would have just said, "Oh, dude, that sucks. You should have another drink," right? Instead, he told me the truth that I had been unwilling or blind to hear for so long. And that's that I controlled my destiny. And once I started to internalize that and really understand that, my life started to change.
What was your immediate reaction when he said that to you?
I wanted to tell him to go fuck himself. But then I thought about it, and I saw the guy that was in front of me, and he was, he mirrored me in a lot of different ways. We were both baseball players at a young age in a highly competitive standpoint. We were both presidents of our fraternities. We were both, highly successful in a job out of college. The only difference was that I got fired 4 years in the mine for a mistake that I didn't think was mine until that point. And he was a VP with the company that he was working with. And so, I saw how his radical acceptance of responsibility and the type of person that he was had led him to be in so much of a better position than me. And so I actually listened rather than just closing him out.
And then wrestling with that truth, did it take you long before you started building up to who you are, or was it a long period? When you watch movies or you read a book about self-help or someone going through this journey, it tends to fast forward into the good part, but for you, did it take a long time before you started building yourself?
Yeah, well, so the first thing was that right after we had that conversation, he's like, "You want to go talk to girls?" I'm like, "Sure." So we did, and girls were just like falling all over him. And I could not get a word in. I'm like, "What the hell am I watching?" Like, this was the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen. So I go home and I'm like, "Okay, this guy is just like far and away what I had aspired to be, a number of years ago. How do I get myself to that point?" And so it started to sow small seeds of like, how do I get myself better? And so I started to, I read a couple books like How to Win Friends and Influence People and The Game by Neil Strauss. And it started to kind of sow some small seeds for how I would progress.
Hmm.
But I didn't really get to the point of truly understanding his message and what he was trying to tell me until 6 months later, after I had moved from Connecticut to Florida, which was one thing that talking to him and him saying, dude, if you don't like this place, then fucking leave. Nobody's forcing you to be here. I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. I can move. You think, oh, I signed a lease. Who cares? Move, right? Like, take control of your life. And it wasn't until 6 months later when I had my experience with psilocybin mushrooms that just completely sucked me out of the mental traps that I was in, that I really started to understand the core of the message and really started to transform. There were small seeds sown there, but
Hmm.
it didn't truly take hold until 6 months later when I had that experience.
So it sounds like, these small seeds were put into your earth, but then you took time to water them by reading and learning and teaching yourself. So that's amazing. When it
Mhm.
comes to love and loss, do you have a memory of a loss or a love where it transformed how you viewed the world around you or yourself?
Yeah, well, so there was a girl that I dated from the time I was a senior in college for then 4.5 years after that. And, I was just so lost in terms of what I wanted in life at that point. My values were fucked up. I, did not treat her the way that, you know, I that she should have expected to be treated. And it hurt me for a long time because I didn't truly sit with myself and understand why I was doing the things that I was doing. And then when I had my experience with psilocybin, it allowed me to very clearly see the way that I was acting through that. And from that point, could rectify it in my mind and say, okay, well, now I understand the patterns. I understand the the trauma that I'd been trying to cover for with this relationship and the things that I'd been really seeking for validation wise to make myself not hurt as much as I did inside. Forgave myself for the way that I was during that relationship, and it helped me to see much more clearly the type of person that I wanted to be, the type of partner that I wanted to be, and how I wanted to show up for people in my life.
And do you still talk to some of these people that you had, I guess, treated differently back in the day? Do you still talk to any of them?
No, I had reached out to try to apologize, but wasn't given the opportunity to.
Well, making that effort, that can be healing in itself. So that's great that you at least made the effort.
Yeah, no one can say I didn't try.
Exactly, exactly. It's said that hardship produces empathy and it teaches us empathy. And in times of brokenness, sometimes we can see the world totally differently because we were once broken and then we, develop this empathy. Do you have an incident in your life where you were completely broken? I'm sure we all do, but can you
Oh
think
yeah.
of one in particular that transformed and gave you great empathy?
Well, right after I had my experience, there were so many things that I wanted to do, and there have always been things that I've told myself, it'd be really nice to do this. It would be really nice to do that. And one of them was that I had wanted to make dinner for my friends. And so one night I made like 50 meatballs, a whole bunch of spaghetti. I made my mom's homemade recipe, and I texted all the friends that lived in my apartment building, maybe like 15 of them, like, hey guys, I made spaghetti and meatballs. Whoever wants to come grab a plate, like, happy to share with you. I think only like one or two people came by, which meant that I had a whole bunch of extra food. And I'm like, okay, well, what do I do with this? Let's go give it to some homeless people. And so I stuffed my backpack with a bunch of, plastic bags filled with spaghetti and meatballs and walked around and just, handed it out to homeless people in Tampa and sat with them for a little bit and had a conversation. And the way that I could tell that small act touched them, just that it was just me going to do that. It wasn't part of, a charity or someone else organizing it. It was just me going out and doing it. The impact that I could see in their eyes and the gratitude, at least from some of them. Some
Yeah.
of them were too far gone to really understand what was going on. But, you know, there were a couple where you could just really see how much it meant to them that somebody took time out of their own day to just do that small act and to actually have a conversation with them. And so, I would say that that was a really big thing for me, is just seeing the gratitude in people's eyes and how much a small act like that can really impact someone.
What I also get from that is that you didn't stay in your apartment and wonder why only two showed up. You did something meaningful and turned it into something really beautiful and compassionate. That is really interesting.
Yeah, yeah, and that's definitely a big thing too, because so many times earlier in life, like before I had my experience with psilocybin, if something like that would have happened, I would have been bitter about it. I've been like, like, fuck everyone. Why don't you guys show up for me? I'm doing something nice for you, yada yada yada, right? And it would been me screaming from the top of my soapbox about why people don't appreciate what other people do for them, and rather than doing that, I found people that did really appreciate that.
So let's talk about that experience a little bit. Can you walk us through that experience that you had that was life changing for you and what that led up to?
Up until the point that I found psilocybin in my life, I'd been a reckless mess of a human being. My values were all based on cheap dopamine hits. I was addicted to women and porn and gambling and tobacco and alcohol and cocaine and every other vice that you could imagine that, a 30-year-old guy in a terrible position in life would be hooked on. And when I had my experience with psilocybin, I had not intended to use it as a life changing type of thing. I was preparing to go to a music festival and just started experimenting to make sure that I wouldn't freak out when I'm in a crowd of 100,000 people. And so I started experimenting a little bit. And when I did, it just started to unlock little thing after little thing after little thing that initially started with me just finally coming to grips with my role in that relationship and the terrible person that I was during that. And then the second experience that I had gave me the clarity and peace of mind to stop the anxiety and depression that I had dealt with my whole life for the first time ever, and just say, wow, I'm creating all of this in my own mind. Like, this only exists because I'm allowing the rumination and the repetitive thoughts to continue to persist. And if I can stop that and just focus on what's good rather than what hasn't gone right, that I can get myself out of these loops and start focusing on what truly matters. And that's how to drive myself forward in a positive way. And then so after that experience, I was just so much of a nicer person. I was more present. I would talk to people at the grocery store and, just have random conversations with people. And otherwise, this go, 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 dopamine, 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 achieve mindset would just keep me locked into just firing on all cylinders constantly. And so when I had that experience, it allowed me to appreciate life and to, not be anxious about what was to come or depressed about the life that I'd lived up to that point and the things that I hadn't been able to do because of X, Y, and Z. And, with that came the clarity to decide exactly who I wanted to be. And so I got a very clear vision for what I wanted my life to look like. And that wasn't a life with cocaine. And so, 3 weeks after I tried psilocybin for the first time, I did my last line of coke, and I haven't had any desire to do it since. No cravings whatsoever. There hasn't been a single time that I've been like, oh my God, I should go do. No, no, no. There has not been anything like that. I stopped binge drinking a week and a half after that, and had been drunk once from that point for the next year plus that followed. And now we're closing in on 2 years without alcohol. And so with that came the ability to look at my life and look at all of the things that weren't going right, whether that was a messy room or dishes in the sink or laundry not being done or, yada, 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 and start to correct one little thing after the other after the other. And it just created a snowball effect that has continued to progress in such a massive way that to imagine that I would be living the life that I'm living right now 3 years ago, three 3 years and a month ago, uh, I would have not believed that I would be living the life that I'm living right now.
Do you feel like all of the difficulties and hardships that you witnessed had to be there to become who you are today?
1,000,000%. And that's a big theme in my book, is that there's absolutely zero regret of anything that I went through, because it all happened exactly as it needed to bring me to right here. And without a single piece of that missing, I wouldn't be here. And here is so freaking incredible that I can't believe it. So, there's not a single piece of regret for anything that I went through earlier in life. And I wouldn't change a single thing, because life's pretty incredible, Vanessa.
I feel like that's something we can meditate on almost, that when we're going through these really difficult times, there's going to be a moment in the future where we're looking back and we're understanding that this absolutely had to happen, but that we got through it. And so,
Oh, yeah.
today's society judges things that we don't understand. Can you tell us something about psilocybin that people don't understand?
The emerging research coming out on it is really encouraging, and it really paints to the effect that this substance can have on humanity. But when I was writing my book, I came across a book by this guy named Michael Pollan, and the name of the book is called "This Is Your Mind on Plants." And "This Is Your Mind on Plants" takes the reader through three separate plants: poppy seeds, or poppies, right, which produce opium,
Hmm.
mescaline and the peyote cactus, and caffeine. And they take you through the history of it and how it impacted society and continues to impact society. And the one on caffeine is the most interesting because it really takes the reader through how back in the 1400s, society was at a terrible place. It hadn't progressed for hundreds, maybe thousands of years. And that's because the only way that you could drink water was if it had alcohol in it, because alcohol would kill the germs, and everybody's defecating in the lakes and streams and rivers and so on and so forth, and so there's no clean drinking water other than alcohol, because the alcohol is killing the bacteria, until coffee and tea got introduced to the West, at which point they started boiling the water, which killed off germs and could give you something clean to drink that wasn't alcohol and wasn't slowing you down and making you hungover and so on and so forth, and was actually speeding you up and making you more efficient. And so the introduction of caffeine to the Western world in the 40s brought society out of the Dark Ages and into the Enlightenment period, which then led to, exploring the West and discovering the US, and, all of these incredible things that have come uh, as a result of, the now ability to think and to congregate and so on and so forth, because people just aren't drunk 24/7, 365.
Hmm.
And that's a really long explanation for just saying that psilocybin is going to have a similar impact on society, because psilocybin, beyond what it does to help us connect to people and make us happier and more engaged and more empathetic and so on and so forth, it gives us the ability to self-analyze and self-correct in such a beautiful way that I believe it's going to help us really create the best versions of ourselves as human beings in a way that can't really be quantified yet, but it will be in the next 10, 20, 50 years in such a major way that it's going to be looked at as a monumental turning point in human history.
That's the great thing about brand new plants, brand new subjects, that we don't know yet the potential that it's unlocked, but it'll be evident in the future. And that's just great to consider
Hmm.
that there's something else out there that helps people. When it comes to your work, what is your why behind what you do?
I want to impact the world in a majorly positive way. I want to be seen as somebody that changes the world's understanding of the potential of psychedelics. Because right now, even still, they're largely seen as a party thing, something that, degenerates do or whatever, right? And I want to show people how the introduction of something like psilocybin can help take someone from, the terrible life I'd been living in, the directionless way that I'd been living life, into doing what I do now, which is help people on a daily basis to be healthier and happier and more connected and more thoughtful and so on and so forth. And so, what I do, Get Psyched Fitness, is a combination of physical fitness, of course, but also mindfulness and psychedelics, and, the intersection between the two, combined with, philosophy and positive self development. And so, I just aim every day to help people become the best versions of themselves, whether that's through fitness or through mindset. And, the impact that I'm already creating for people is just so incredible. And I love the work that I do because it, it creates waves in such a beautiful way.
Can you give examples of how you help people with the fitness and with the book and the coaching?
I'm slowly making my mark here in St. Petersburg. My wife and I host three different classes that we put on for free throughout the week to just create community and get people out and having a good time and enjoying themselves. And so that's a really special way that we're able to give our time to people without expectation and just create beautiful community. And then, that snowballs into different things, like a monthly party that we have on the last Saturday of every month for the people that come to our classes. And we're just able to give people an experience of being better for themselves without an expectation of it, right? And fitness is, it's something that can be done for free, right? You don't need to have shoes on. You don't need to have clothes on. You could go outside and go for a run. You might get arrested without the clothes, but you could do that. And so, we want to give people the opportunity to really become a better version of themselves, and then let that philosophy kind of sow seeds and grow within them to create an empowerment and understanding that they control their lives, and that there's so much good that comes from physical fitness and exercise, not only from a physical standpoint, but also from what it does for your mental health, what it does for your
Mm.
confidence, what it does to just, make sure that you feel better about yourself on an everyday basis.
So the person receiving the seeds back then is now being the seeder, and you're giving people seeds now.
But yeah, oh yeah.
Can you tell people where to find your work, websites, where to find you, and the social platforms, all that good stuff?
Yeah, well, first and foremost, my book, Your Mindset is Your Reality, is available on Amazon. It's in both print, Kindle, and audiobook. My website, getpsychedfitness.com, is going to have all the information about what we do from a personal training and integration coaching standpoint, as well as links to that book. And my Instagram is by far the best way to keep in contact with me. It's at Johnny B, John.
And what can people expect in this amazing book by this amazing writer?
You're going to encounter a no holds barred account of what happened in my mind both before, during, and after my experimentation with psilocybin, and how I took myself from somebody who was not living a great life to somebody who uses his life every single day to help others. And, to a person, the people that have read my book, the people that have listened to my book, have reached out to me saying that they've connected with it in some type of way. And whether that's a 75-year-old man or a 20-year-old woman or anywhere in between, there's something that everybody has connected with from my book, because it touches on a number of different things, whether that's, just own personal agency and the
Mm.
ability of ourselves to control our lives through intentional thought and action, or relationships with family members or ourselves or significant others, and values, and so on and so forth. And there's just a million different themes that are touched on in the book, and so there's something for everybody in there. But I'm really proud of it, because the impact that I've already had on people has been incredible to see, and the way that people have responded to my brutal, brutal, brutal authenticity and
Mhm.
vulnerability throughout it, and talking about things that most people would not be comfortable with sharing in any type of public format. And so, there's a quote from the author Mark Manson, and he says, "It's impossible to be an important and life changing presence to some people without also being a complete joke and embarrassment to others." And so, as I was writing the book, I had that in mind, and I just kept saying, well, if this makes me a little bit uncomfortable to share, it's going to make it that much more important for people to hear it, because they're going to have the same type of thing that they went through. And so sharing it's going to give me the opportunity to impact others in a positive way. And I'm just very grateful that I have.
It's an amazing gift to comprehend that your story and you sharing your story has touched someone else. Doesn't matter if it's a million people or just one person, but having helped someone through your work must feel amazing for you.
Absolutely. And that's really what one of the final thoughts of my book was that, when writing it, I wanted to change the world, right? I wanted to help the world understand psychedelics in a different way. But that as I was writing it, I realized, getting a book in front of people is really freaking difficult. And it doesn't matter at the end of the day if I sell one copy or a million copies, because what I've already done to change myself has started to make waves through the people connected with me. And I give the example of my nephew, who's 12 years younger than me.
Mhm.
And when I went through my experience with psilocybin, he had been at the end of his high school career and was drinking and had tried cocaine for the first time. And was sharing that with me and would talk to me about getting girls and stuff like that. And it's all these things that he's sharing with me because I would validate him in my previous life. And after I had my experience with psilocybin, the messaging to him changed. Like, dude, do not do that. Get yourself out of it. Focus on things that are going to be better for you in the long term. And he has gone from where he was there to now following a similar path to me, not drinking as much, focusing on his health in a stronger sense, trying to stay focused on the bigger picture. And I can see the type of impact that me changing has had, which is beautiful because, my father was an alcoholic and my brother was an alcoholic and drug addict. And, so for me to help to stop the cycle of addiction and self destructive habits, it just means so much. And it doesn't matter if another person is impacted or not, because I already did my job in changing myself and therefore changing my nephew, who's the most important person to me, other than maybe my wife. But yeah.
Well, that's amazing. You've done a wonderful job at helping people, but also helping yourself and sharing your story. I would say you are 10 out of 10 an awesome human. So thank you for all that you do and all that you will do in the future. I'd
Thank
like
you,
to close
Vanessa.
with one of my most favorite questions of all time. If you could share a message with humanity, any message at all, what would that message be?
The message is this: we all have the ability to make ourselves exactly who we want to be. Just because you don't like where you are in life right now doesn't mean that you can't be somewhere completely, totally different in a day, a year, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. And it all comes down to creating a very clear vision for yourself and making one good decision after the other. Every decision that you make is a vote for either who you are or who you want to be. And the more that you can vote with your good decisions for that person that you want to be, the closer that you're going to get to living a life that truly, truly, truly inspires you.
That's an excellent message. Thank you so much for sharing that. We look forward to reading your book and seeing all the awesome things that you do. John Borden, thanks for being on Humanity 2.0, and we wish you the best week of your life.
And that's a high bar, but hey, who knows?
Who knows? And for the rest of you guys watching, thank you for watching another episode of Humanity 2.0. We'll see you next week with another episode and more discussions on humanity. Be good to other humans.